Let's blast through with Sonic speed!
Okay!
Alright!
The gameplay styles across the 3D Sonic games have been anything but consistent. And for the last 20 some odd years, Sega and Sonic Team always felt the need to reinvent the wheel, even when it didn't seem necessary. And while I don't think the experimentation has always struck gold for the series, it's also led to some really interesting entries. But across the different types of gameplay Sonic has had, I feel that the adventure formula was never really given the chance to be properly executed. Sonic Adventure 2 is definitely my favorite of the bunch, but I already did a video on that one, and if you're curious about my thoughts on the general adventure formula, I would check that video out too. But really, every adventure-style game has something that I think it does well, and that stands for today's subject, Sonic Heroes. I think Sonic Heroes might be the most misunderstood of the early 3D Sonic games. It's not quite as unabashedly edgy as Shadow the Hedgehog, and not as hopelessly unfinished as Sonic 06 was. So for me, it always seemed to stand in this weird middle ground between what the typical fan would probably consider the good and bad of the Sonic Adventure era. This might be a bit of a stretch, but I feel like Sonic Heroes is a little bit more forgotten over time, even though elements from it have carried on in future games. It's not really referred back to as much as Sonic Adventure 1 or 2 are. It's got some aspects that are frankly obtuse and confusing, but it also has a lot of stuff that I think is really easy to love. And so that's why I wanted to take a dive into Sonic Heroes today, to explain a bit why I always come back to this one, even after 20 years. Sonic Heroes was the first time the series was released on multiple platforms, due to Sega transitioning into a third-party studio, and so the series was entering a pretty new phase in its life. Because of the new exposure, a lot of the game was made with the idea that it could potentially be the first Sonic game for a lot of new folks on PlayStation or Xbox. I can't find the exact interview or article, but I do remember hearing something along those lines coming from Sega and Sonic Team. With that in mind, Heroes functions as a bit of a throwback to the Genesis formula. It follows the canon from the previous games, but has a simplified story and structure compared to the Dreamcasts. For example, there's no Chao Garden or Hub World, and you play through levels front to back just like you did in the classic series. The individual story style from the Adventure series is still broken up by the 4 playable teams, but here they all go through the same 7 zones. You can access special stages to unlock Chaos Emeralds just like in the Genesis games, but Super Sonic is still stuck as a last story exclusive thing for the final boss. It's also worth mentioning that this game reintroduces a lot of classic characters like Metal Sonic or the Chaotix, with this being the Chaotix's only major appearance as playable characters in a full-fledged Sonic game. Does Knuckles Chaotix count as a Sonic game? Like, kind of? I don't know. The stage design also borrows a lot from the Genesis games, and it does a lot to help them feel a lot more unique. Seaside Hill is very clearly a knock on Green Hill, with the checkerboard canyons, and Frog Forest reuses some mushroom sound effects from Mushroom Hill. I don't know when to mention this, but the music in Sonic Heroes is also absolutely incredible, and we're just going to talk about that for a minute. It might be one of my favorite soundtracks in the series. Nearly every level theme is firing on all cylinders, and it screams Sonic music. Like, even the menu music is just so fantastic. When I think of Sonic music, I really do lean on the Heroes soundtrack. It's really bright and exciting, but it's also fun and weird when it needs to be. Plus, this game came out in the prime era of cheeseball Sonic lyrical anthems, which I kinda love. I have a soft spot for all of the lyrical songs that are associated with each team, and what I'm made of as the final boss soundtrack is so great. I'll be throwing in songs from this game throughout the video, but if there is anything that you need to do after watching this, go listen to that soundtrack. It's awesome.
Now I get it. Now I know what this is all about. You're mad at Eggman for sealing you in this room. And you can't remember anything, can you?
Even though the structure of the classic games is adopted here and applied to the then modern series, there's still a lot of adventure-isms throughout the game, like cutscenes and dialogue. Of course, since this is the era that I grew up with, I still do find that the Sonic and Shadow voices are just my preferred voices for these characters. It's just this period of time before Shadow got too cartoonishly edgy and Knuckles was just a chill guy. I know things like this have gotten better in more recent entries, but it's been a long time coming. As far as I know, this was the last appearance of this Sonic Adventure cast of characters before they moved on to the voice actors from Sonic X. Tails was recast to be played by an actual child in this one, which is weird, but kind of okay, I guess. At this point, I'm over it.
Look at all those Eggman robots!
The story of Heroes is a lot shorter in content than the other 3D Sonic games, but they had a few CG cutscenes for every team's story, as well as a bunch of supplemental voice lines during gameplay, which was pretty new for Sonic at the time. Some of these voice lines get repeated so often that they're lodged in my brain, and it's hard not to memorize them. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 obviously have some iconic lines that have stuck in the fan base, but Heroes has a lot that are really good too.
As soon as I conquer the world, I will pay you!
Worthless consumer models!
Excuse me, miss. I was wondering if I could ask you something.
If it's about a date, it'll have to wait.
What? You actually thought you could defeat me by transforming into a monster?
Well then, it'll be a date to die for.
Some of this stuff is so cheesy, but I would be lying if I said I didn't love it. Anyway. I mentioned a minute ago that Sonic Heroes was released for all the major platforms at the time, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, but I've always felt like it just belonged on GameCube. Both of the Sonic Adventure games were released for it, and Sonic Heroes just feels like it was built with that controller in mind. The face buttons on the GameCube controller feel like they're just built for this game, with X and Y swapping the characters, A being jump, and B doing actions. The GameCube really feels like it was built for Sonic Heroes' gameplay, and we can get into that next. So in my Sonic Adventure 2 video, I talked about the things that I felt made these adventure games so special to me. The Sonic Adventure games really brought this specific formula of fast-paced, expressive gameplay with really cool, diverse levels and a little bit of jank that made them all so much fun to play. And I really think that Sonic Heroes managed to deliver in these categories, just with some inconsistent results.
Just watch this.
I don't know where the fanbase stands on Sonic Heroes these days, but I still feel like it's a really good game that just happens to have a weird sort of cloud of junk surrounding it. The biggest factor that separates Sonic Heroes from the other Sonic games is its team swapping mechanic. Instead of a single playable character, you're instead in control of 3 teammates that you can manually swap to control one at a time. Each team consists of a speed, fly, and power character, and each one is responsible for doing certain tasks in every level. Let's take a look at the main team, Team Sonic. Sonic's in the lead with the most versatile moveset of the 3, and of course being the speed character, he's the fastest. Tails, as a flying character, lets you jump and hover over gaps, and throw teammates at enemies to stun them from range. And Knuckles, being the power character, deals the most damage to enemies, but doesn't really have the same movement tools, save for this glide that you use alongside these fans. Also, each of the 4 playable teams have some small divergences in their abilities, but they're all relatively the same, so I'm going to refer to them as broadly as possible here. It gets the idea across, I hope. I just have a ton of thoughts about this game's mechanics. I actually love the gameplay here in a lot of ways, but Sonic Heroes is also incredibly janky, and if you don't know what it expects from you, it can lead to you getting really frustrated. Like the speed characters, for example. While speed might make it seem like they're useful for when you want to cover ground quickly, the movement controls in Sonic Heroes are really loose. You can speed off at the drop of a hat, and it can make it feel like the game is just completely out of control. Not to mention, because you'd probably expect to play as Sonic the most, you're gonna swap to speed, or at least wish you could. Sonic Heroes expects you to learn a lot more than any other Sonic game in order to just have fun. Each of the 3 playable characters have their own sort of use cases, and while that's pretty clear in the tutorials, I think that when you actually play the game, you have to learn what they're actually good at. In order to handle the speed character's insane ability to fly off the stage, you can take advantage of your fly character's ability to save yourself from falling into a pit. I think it can be hard to understand what the game expects you to do and why you even need to play as these other characters. And I don't mean why in the literal sense of I should use the power character for the power specific ability. I more mean it in the sense that I should use the power character against these enemies or these obstacles, because if I don't, I'm gonna die. Fly mode can only hit these things, power mode can only do those things, and you need to know when and why you swap. With enough experience, you'll learn when you can even ignore the signs and do something a bit more optimal. Another big thing is that the team swapping mechanic can feel a little bit sluggish at times, because you're never told that you can only swap when you're grounded. And along with that, you just need to know when and where or why you can or can't swap heroes. Sometimes a teammate will get hit and you can't really swap to them until they're ready, so it can be confusing as a player to not really understand why this is happening. Oftentimes, the swap mechanic, like so many things in Heroes, can just feel more convoluted than it needs to be. When you swap positions, your characters are supposed to join you in whatever pose you're in. When you're in power mode, you're in a triangle. When you're flying, you're in a straight line, that sort of thing. But because every character is semi-independent and can get hit on their own, it can really often make the game feel unresponsive. This leads to a lot of questionable moments where something will happen and you won't even really understand why. So, for example, if you take damage, your character will enter an invincible state, but if you swap to another character immediately after taking damage, your ring count will transfer to the new character, but not your invincibility. And in a game where you're typically going to want to not die so you can earn an A rank, it can make things a little frustrating.
Talk about being stubborn and full of surprises.
With the addition of this character swapping mechanic and new enemy types to keep an eye out for or level gimmicks, it can make Sonic Heroes feel a little bit confusing, but this is really just scratching the surface. Sonic Heroes also has a level up system in every stage.
Level up!
If you collect these orbs from enemies or pass a checkpoint, a teammate can level up and improve their skills, but if you die or go to another stage, these levels are reset. I think understanding how this system works exactly is really important to getting to enjoy Sonic Heroes. At level 3, the speed characters have their tornado jumps attached to their homing attacks, so it lets you disarm shielded enemies instantly and attach to these swinging poles much faster. And at level 2, the flying characters can do damage with their thunder shoot instead of just stunning enemies. While I don't think that the power abilities are that much more enhanced when they get leveled up, they also have a really good use case in defeating these large hammer enemies in the later levels. These power spikes can make the speed and fly characters feel a lot more versatile and makes the game a lot easier to play. Leveling up doesn't really have a huge impact on your ability to do the platforming segments. Really, leveling up is the most important when you're dealing with all of the enemies that Sonic Heroes throws at you. In the earlier stages, it's not so bad, with most enemies not having much armor or shields, but later on, a lot of the enemies you'll come across have certain abilities that get in your way when trying to clear them out. Taking advantage of the level system makes it a lot simpler. Thundershoot, for example, is something I always tried to upgrade immediately because it can absolutely trivialize a lot of sections in the game. If you needed more evidence that the Thundershoot is really worth leveling as soon as possible, it can turn the second to last boss into an absolute cakewalk.
Thanks for the treasure, Doc.
To be honest though, I really wish the game just let you be permanently stuck at level 3. It doesn't really feel unfair or anything, so it's not like it's some reward for playing well. The advantage of knowing what to level up first is an interesting mechanic in some ways and allows for some strategy, but it really just makes dying midway through a level a little bit more annoying. When I first played Sonic Heroes as a kid, I don't think I even understood why the level up system was even there.
It's all part of being a good detective.
Heroes is notorious for having incredibly slippery controls. Sonic and the other speed characters can blast off in random directions if you aren't sure what you're doing. The boost ability that the speed characters have is actually really easy to activate on accident and can get you killed pretty often. There's just so many things that can go wrong when you're playing this game, and so I imagine it probably brought that experience down for loads of people. And so you couple all of these new mechanics with this really twitchy character controller, and it leads Sonic Heroes to being unintentionally difficult in a lot of ways. And even if you make the slightest mistake, it can cost you an A rank, or even worse, just make the game less fun to play because now you're starting at level 0. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Sonic Heroes can feel incredibly obtuse and confusing and chaotic at times, but I do think that you can eventually learn to get around these problems. I just spent the last few minutes kind of going hard on Sonic Heroes here, but I do think that the things I like are a lot of fun. After you understand what's janky and what you can and can't do, I think that it's really easy to get used to. So let's take a lesson in the world of jank management. For example, a lot of later enemies in the game have this annoying armor that can be impossible to whittle down if you don't know what you're doing. If you're not careful and you just start mashing the power abilities, you'll probably just get knocked off the stage. But if you implement that screen clearing team attack ability, you can use that to clear these enemies in no time and save yourself the trouble. The team blasts are actually relatively well spaced out in terms of enemy encounters, and so you'll almost always have one ready whenever you need it. And for a screen clearing ability, it's actually a little bit more deep than it lets on. Each team has their own special effect after doing a team attack to consider. Team Sonic has a few seconds to activate a light attack from the previous games and instantly destroy any lingering enemies, and Chaotix can earn rings from enemy robots that are destroyed during and shortly after their team attack, which can give you another team attack for free. And that's just one mechanic that allows you to flex your knowledge and understanding of the levels and mechanics in Sonic Heroes in order to get those A ranks. It all really comes down to how well you can manage the janky aspects of the characters. Eventually, you'll learn how to properly control the power characters without sliding off of the stage, or you'll learn to implement the flying characters in order to balance on grind rails when it's more dangerous. You'll be able to use the speed characters to blast off of ramps to get higher ground easier, and you'll learn how to use the light speed dash to go through a set of rings without bouncing off the edge of a level. I'm kind of joking with the frequency that I bring up the janky issues with this game, but they are there, and I do want to acknowledge them. Regardless, I still think that there's a level of skill expression in Sonic Heroes that's also present in some of the better Sonic games. And that's especially clear in the Team Dark levels. Every team plays through the same levels like I mentioned before, but they do it differently. Realistically, it's pretty much like Team Rose is easy mode, Team Sonic is normal mode, Dark is hard mode, and Team Chaotix is a mission mode. But this ends up making it so that Team Dark stages feel the most fleshed out of any of the other characters. I think Team Dark stages are really where everything Sonic Heroes brings to the table manages to click. Every level in Team Dark's story will add new mechanics for shortcuts or bonus points. So for example, the beginning of Power Plant in Team Dark has a new shortcut that you can immediately get to by light dashing. Team Dark also go through all of the levels front to back and don't typically miss out on areas that the other teams would. The only thing is, this leads to a pretty big issue with the level structure in Heroes, where the length of every stage completely gets out of hand. Team Dark stages can get close to the 10-minute mark, which I think is just too long. I spent most of my time recording this game trying to complete the A ranks for the last maybe 20 or 30 missions that I had left, but Team Dark and Team Chaotix's levels just take so long to complete. Getting the A ranks for these two teams always felt like I was walking a tightrope. Like, it's one thing to balance for a few seconds, but the longer you take, you're gonna fall eventually. If you play as Team Rose after playing it as Chaotix or Team Dark, those levels will feel like less than a minute long. If all the levels were just a little bit shorter, I think it would have been great. Let's take a minute and talk about each stage in Sonic Heroes. I think the levels in Zone 2, Grand Metropolis, and Power Plant are some of my favorites to replay. They've got a lot of really satisfying skips in the Team Dark version, and I really find myself coming back to those ones whenever I would throw on Sonic Heroes. But the casino levels might be some of the worst in the series. Visually and musically, they're fantastic, but I'm certain that a lot of people got to Casino Park and just gave up because of all the jank. I love me some Sonic jankiness, but man, this level has it in spades. The pinball mechanics are frankly awful to control and probably shouldn't have shipped in the state they're in. It's like you have control over it, but at the same time, you have no control at all. It's just not working. But thankfully, that's really the only zone I would consider bad. Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace are great beginning levels, and eventually you get to Rail Canyon and Bullet Station, which are really fun to play as well. I've always been a fan of the following two zones' gimmicks in Frog Forest and Hang Castle.
What's happening to us?
I really love the setting of the final missions, Egg Fleet and Final Fortress. Egg Fleet has a lot of fun rail grinding sections that are really reminiscent of Final Rush from Sonic Adventure 2, and Final Fortress is just a great, solid scenario for a finale. The beams at the end also used to stress me out like crazy, and I would just mess up my rail jumping, but it's, again, not that bad when you get used to it. I think with a lot of Sonic games, there will be this moment where things just click with you, and you'll realize that you can't get this stuff anywhere else. When I decided to cover Sonic Heroes here, I chose to complete everything in the game because I had that unfinished save data, and then to get all the A ranks so I could unlock the super hard missions that are the final unlockable in the game. It was honestly a slog to get through, but I still had a lot of fun getting better and better at Sonic Heroes. Sooner or later, I think I learned where I would die the most often, and I would use that knowledge to play those sections a lot safer. I don't know if Sonic Heroes is a game that deserves your time to learn and adapt to it, but I do think that you'll have a lot more fun if you do. Unless you want to play as Team Rose, anyone can do that. I learned a lot about specific interactions and ways to make things easier for myself as I played Sonic Heroes trying to get those A ranks. I didn't know that you can smack these shielded enemies with the power characters to break their shields instead of wasting time using the tornado as a speed character. And I also learned that you can tornado jump these helmeted hammer guys to knock their helmets off early. Eventually I learned that the best way to recall your characters to do more attacks as a power form was to just quickly do a triangle jump. There are so many little things in Sonic Heroes that you can do to optimize your play. My biggest issue when trying to complete Sonic Heroes 100% was honestly just that Team Chaotix's level structure is really bad. And it sucks because I love these characters, but their levels can range from pretty fun to absolute misery. Half of these levels end up as these needle in the haystack treasure hunts, and the bonus missions always force you to meticulously pick through every stage with a fine-tooth comb looking for the last 20 capsules or whatever. Your best bet is to either spend an hour looking through the entire level or find them in a guide. But even after finding a guide, following through on this was still pretty hard because it's Sonic Heroes, and it's really easy to make one mistake and lose the last 10 minutes you spent. You might see a lot of Team Chaotix gameplay throughout this video, and it's pretty much to do with struggling to get these A ranks. I'd already cleared most of the Sonic and Team Dark levels years ago, and I ignored Team Chaotix for a reason. The Final Fortress A rank was by far the worst, with an incredibly strict score requirement that forced me to replay the level almost 3 times in order to get every last bit of score I could find. Typically, I don't believe that completing games is ever the most fun way to play them, but that's my opinion. I did have fun with the stealth missions though, that was fun.
Come on, boys, let's go!
I played a lot of Sonic Heroes between getting the A ranks and doing all of the recording for this video, and I hope I've explained what I enjoy about this game enough that you can let me complain about some really questionable things that happened during my time playing. Let me complain about this nonsense for a minute. Why do enemy weapons have persistent hitboxes? Why did they think putting this giant hammer enemy at the end of a 10-minute level on a tiny platform was a good idea? Why don't these laser gun enemies animate after you start attacking them? And how are you supposed to collect anything with these flowers when you swing around like this? I had so many of these ridiculous instances where things would just not work. And I was pretty happy to be done with the A ranks. After rounding out the last few medals that I needed to complete the game, I was finally at the elusive super hard mode. And in fairness, it's pretty hard. It feels like a real test for people that have 100% completed the game. It seems like it's a remixed version of the Team Dark stages, with objects and enemies reorganized to force you to take the riskier paths in every stage. It's actually pretty fun, but for some reason it isn't tied to its own level section, so you have to play through it all in one go. As far as I could tell, you can't pick up from whatever stage you want, and you can't choose what team to play as, so you're always stuck as Team Sonic. There's no ranking when you complete levels, and it just moves you to the next stage. There's no continues as well, so if you run out of lives you get booted back to Seaside Hill. It is a really cool completion bonus though, and I'm glad to finally have tried it out after seeing that grayed out box on the menu for probably 20 years. Sonic Heroes is certainly something. Despite coming right after the fan favorite Sonic Adventure 2, and having the reinforced bones of the classic formula, Sonic Heroes just has so much weird stuff involved with it. It couldn't have just been Sonic Adventure 3, and Sega decided to make this really confusing project that doesn't really seem to be interested in doing anything other than being Sonic Heroes. There's so much to love about this one, with an amazing soundtrack and level concepts, and surprisingly deep mechanics. But boy, does it have a deeply confusing side to it. Sometimes it seems like Sega didn't even know what game they were making. But even with all of these flaws, I still find it in the rotation of GameCube games that I throw on whenever I just want to have a good time. I'm obviously aware that a lot of people have issues with Sonic Heroes, and understandably so, but I think it still has the heart of the first 2 Sonic Adventures inside of it, and that's something that would get lost as time went on. Sonic Heroes really feels like this line in the sand that divides the early 3D era.
Anytime you want a rematch, just let me know. I'll be waiting.
I'd love to hear what you all think about Sonic Heroes. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you wish it was different? I know I kind of skimmed over the story and stuff like that, but I have so much to say about the gameplay and all of its weird intricacies. I think it's a divisive game among a series full of divisive games. I try to read every comment that I get in these videos, so feel free to share. That's pretty much it for me here today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this in the future. One more time, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, and take it easy.